people should focus on what's working. If you're starting a business with a goal of making money, which I hope that's your goal when you start a business, that's why we do it. And if you start a business and you're making money one way or seeing success one way, even if that's not what you expect, embrace that success.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interview. Hi, it's Rick Nuske and welcome to the My Future Business Show today. I'm on the line with ERIC ROSENBERG, and ERIC has a great backstory which I cannot wait to share with you. How are you going, ERIC?
Everything is wonderful here in sunny Southern California.
Beautiful.
I'm excited to be here. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful to have you here. For everybody who's listening, ERIC has a wonderful story to tell about how he's gone from essentially the corporate world, working in the finance industry, and then jumping from that world into another world entirely. I'm not going to tell you what that is. I'm going to let ERIC share a little bit about that story. But first, ERIC, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and share it with our audience?
Sure, yeah. So my big background, I went to college and got a finance degree, and then I went and got a job in a bank. I worked there for not too long, but I learned a ton while I was there. And then I spent the next 10 years-ish in a gray cubicle doing corporate finance and accounting at a few different companies. And also while working full-time, I went to school full-time and picked up an MBA in finance along the way. So doubled down on my finance education. So clearly that's what I thought I was going to be doing with my life, was sitting in cubicles, or hopefully offices, doing corporate finance.
So what do you like to do in your downtime? What's your personal life look like? Is it go get 'em, or is it just a whole heap of relaxing?
I wish it were a whole heap of relaxing. Before kids, it was a lot of travel. I generally took about a trip a month. Which in the U.S. that there's a lot of places I could get to pretty easily for a weekend away, and then like a big international trip every year. But since I have two little girls now, they pretty much get all of my time that I'm not at a computer. I'm focused on them. But if I did have time to do anything else, I just got my private pilot license a couple years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I like to fly small planes. Thank you. Again, it's an expensive hobby, and then with the girls being so needing of my attention, I've not done that in a while, but I keep thinking about it, and I'm right under the runway from the small airport's flight path, so I will see these little 4-seat planes flying over. I'm like, oh, that could be me.
Yeah, the little Cessnas and things like that.
Exactly, that's what I know how to fly.
So do you have to do a minimum number of hours per month or so to keep your license? How does that work?
No, it's a minimum number to get your license. But then to keep your license, there's actually no minimum. But if you want to fly with passengers, you have to have done 3 takeoffs and landings in similar conditions within the last 90 days. So because I haven't had passengers in a long while, more than 90 days, I would, let's say I wanted to take my wife up for a flight, I'd have to rent a plane and fly for about an hour to do a few loops around the airport and get kind of back in the groove of things before I could take passengers up.
That sounds like a very nice pastime, something very exciting. If I might, I'd love to learn a bit more about how you ended up being featured on the likes of HuffPost, Business Insider, Forbes, Entrepreneur, Kiplinger, and Money. How does that happen for you?
Not accidentally. Yeah, so the big thing was a lot of each one of those stories you brought up there was a different reason that brought me there. So for example, a Huffington Post, I was working with some different freelance clients, and one of my clients that I was working with, Betterment, if you're familiar with that company, it's a big investment company. I wrote a story of my student loan debt payoff, which student loan debt is such a huge problem here in the U.S. right now. I actually read earlier today that the average college student now is graduating with $37,000 in student loans, which means that I'm pretty average. I graduated with about $40,000 in student loans on a $90,000 estimated cost MBA program, and paid off my entire debt 2 years and 6 days after graduation. So I wrote that story, and Huffington Post thought it was good enough to put on the front page of the financial education section. So
Wow.
I thought that one was pretty darn cool.
Yeah. You're talking about writing, and that's really the core of the call today for everybody who's listening. And if you are considering getting involved with writing, it's definitely a call you want to stick around for. So tell me a little bit about what's happening for you, how you've gone away from the corporate world, and what you're doing now.
Sure, yeah. So I started this little personal finance blog way back in 2008. It was
Hmm.
October 2008. And over the years, that blog, I didn't realize at the time, was a new resume for a whole new career path that I didn't know existed or that I wanted at that point in time.
Hmm.
So I was writing about personal finance because it was something I'm passionate about, and it still is. It's been something that has been important in my life and important in my family. And having had a finance background, finance education, and worked in a bank, I was the guy who approved mortgages and new credit cards. Having that background and knowledge gave me a unique opportunity to share how personal finance works with a big audience. So I started writing about it online and going to an annual personal finance blogging conference that's now called FinCon. And at FinCon, after a few years, some companies started coming up to me and saying, hey, Eric, we love what you're doing at Personal Profitability. Would you write for our website? We'll pay you to do that.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, heck yeah, you can pay me and I'll write whatever you want. That sounds awesome. So, and I remember before I did that, I remember my first $10 I made online for a little ad on my blog. I was so excited I could go to a bar and get a beer with what I made on the internet. But a few years later, fast forward to 2015, that little side hustle had grown to $40,000 in revenue. That wasn't profit, but being a writer, my margins were pretty high, and my expenses are a laptop and web hosting. I don't need a whole lot of other stuff. So that was the point when I did 40,000 on the side. I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time, and I said to my wife, if there's any time or any sign that I could maybe do this full time, this is it, because the average person in Portland only makes $40,000. I say only, but
Yeah.
that's a big amount of money. But I was able to do that in 10 to 20 hours a week. So I thought, wow, if I do this full time, 40, 50 or more hours a week, I should definitely be able to make more than 40,000. Who knows what number that would be? So like any good responsible dad with a 6-month-old daughter and a wife who was staying at home to watch her full time, I quit my job, sold my house, and moved somewhere more expensive. And it all ended up working out. So yes, I moved down to Southern California where I am today in a city called Ventura. We just made big news because of a fire. Actually, my second daughter was born while we were evacuated from our house because of the fire. So that was a crazy story also. But since being self-employed and working down here, that thought that I should be able to make more if I worked more has come true, and I'm now making. I do income reports at personalprofitability.com, so you can
Mhm.
check it out if you'd like. I have paid over 10,000 a month every month for about 2 years, with a couple exceptions. One month I missed it by a couple $100, but I figure I'm in finance. I used to round to the nearest million. So I
Yeah.
let that one slide. It's a couple $100. And the other one was the month that my daughter was born while we were evacuated, and I missed about half of my work month, but I was still pretty close to my goal considering that. So
Yeah. Wow.
overall, things are going well, and I work with a great group of clients in a variety of different finance-related areas, and things are going well.
I'd love to spin back a little bit on the disaster that's just happened with all the fires. Is your friends, families, neighbours, and colleagues all okay from that, or?
So our home we're fine. Although I just was up in my attic last week for the first time since the fire and saw that all of our insulation has ash on it. So I thought we got out unscathed, but we might have to get our insulation replaced. But that's
Relatively
nothing.
speaking, yeah.
I'd say that's nothing compared to my neighbors. We had within a block of my house 5 burned down totally, uh, with total loss. So it's easy to see.
In Australia, we get a lot of fires, and and I hear a lot of fires happen in California as well.
Yeah,
And
we're cousins in that regard, I guess. Not in a
yeah,
good way.
no, no, it's not a something you'd boast about, is it? But you know, this whole story about how it's evolved for you, and not even being able to see this potential that was in front of you until you were walking that path is often the case with a lot of the people that I speak with who first start off and they say to themselves, "I don't have anything to offer." What do you say to those people that don't actually have, something in front of them that they could sell and make a home career from? What advice would you give them?
I know it's a cliche, but fake it till you make it. It
Yeah.
really works.
Hmm.
For me, when I was 22 years old, or about 22 years old, and I started this personal finance blog, what made me special and different from everyone else? The biggest thing was that I did it.
Mm.
Yes, I had a finance degree and I'd worked in a bank, but there's something that everybody knows more about something than most other people, whatever your thing is. So for me, it's personal finance and money. For you, it might be custom sports cars, or it might be flying small airplanes. Who knows what it is?
Yeah.
But there is an audience out there who's interested in whatever it is you have to offer. I promise you, there is someone out there.
Yeah.
Now, it's going to be easier to succeed online if you pick something that a lot of people are interested in, but there's not too many people who are experts online about that helps you rise to the top of the pile better.
Yeah.
But the internet's a big place and there's lots of eyeballs out there. So even if there's people already doing what you want to do, don't let that discourage you. And remember, they started just where you are, interested in doing whatever their thing is. So the thing that makes them the expert is that they got out there and talked about it, or wrote about it, or podcasted about it, or made videos about it on YouTube, or whatever their way of reaching out to their audiences was. Yeah, so for me, it started out as the blog, and now I have a podcast and some other parts of the business. But also one thing, as you said, a lot of people don't end up where they thought they would be.
Mm.
For me, how that worked, and what I see this again and again, is people should focus on what's working. If you're starting a business with a goal of making money, which I hope that's your goal when you start a business, that's why we do it. And if you start a business and you're making money one way or seeing success one way, even if that's not what you expect, embrace that success.
Yeah.
Like, I thought I was going to be like the next Pat Flynn or Chris Ducker. There's some of these big name bloggers out there who everybody knows who they are if they're in the online entrepreneurship space. And, I know both of those guys. They're awesome guys. But I wasn't seeing that same success. I have one less zero on my income statements every month than Pat Flynn. And I'm working on adding the zero.
Of course.
But in the meantime, I thought that was what was going to work, and what was working was freelancing. What was working with those companies, initially ones that reached out to me to start writing for them. That helped me build up a portfolio and realize the potential I had as a freelance writer. Then I started having to be proactive and reach out to other potential companies, and again, keep going back to FinCon every year to build relationships with the kinds of companies I want to work with and the people that work at them. So it's, you might stumble upon your success, but if you find one, don't ignore it. Make that your focus.
Yeah. And I often hear, people trying, or I'm seeing it on so many different sites that people are trying to offer just a whole swag of different things. And from what you're saying, and then for everybody who's listening to the show today, the real essence of getting any momentum is to really narrow your focus into one core topic. Would you agree with that, Eric?
Yes, I do. And I think if I'd focused better earlier on, I probably would have gotten success faster. I'm someone who has a very easily distracted personality. I have multiple different projects in different states of completion at any given time, online and off, mostly on. But focusing is so important, because if you try to do too much at once, you can do a half-assed job at 5 things, or put the full ass into one thing. I give it the full ass. That's what
You're all in, so to speak.
No, yeah, exactly. Go all in, and yes. Sorry if that was offensive language to anybody.
Oh, goodness, no, that's absolutely fine. That's quite mellow. And I just want to specifically touch on the the idea that you've mentioned to me offline about the side hustle to full time, because obviously there was a phase there where you were working full time, but you were still building this on the side. What sort of investment in personal commitment and time does someone need to do that?
A lot. That was something, the hardest part for a lot of people is finding the time in your schedule that you can put into a business. And often, especially online, starting a business is not that expensive. And depending on where you live, the costs can vary. I know when I was in Colorado, I could start a business and register it with the state for $50. Here in California, it's at least $800 a year. So little different worlds with those two states that start with a C. And
Mm-hmm.
everywhere in the world has different laws. So make sure you are aware of your local laws and don't break them. But the number one thing outside of that money is the time factor. It's putting time into your business. And for me, one example of how I came up with time to build my business more, back in my early 20s when this was all newer, I would come home and dutifully, like most Americans, make dinner and turn on the TV and watch hours of that TV every night. And I paid a big cable company $70 every month for that privilege. And I realized that's not much of a privilege. A third of the time you sit watching TV or watching commercials anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So why spend money to sit there and gain weight on the couch, not doing anything to make your life better, when you could use that time for something productive? So I cut cable, and it helped my life in a few ways. So one, I think the average American spends about 5 hours a day watching TV. I read that the average Canadian spends something like 12 to 14 hours a day engaged with some sort of media. I'm sure Australia has similar statistics too. We all speak the same language. So everywhere in the world, we do the same things. We watch TV and we play on our phones too much. But the TV is the easiest one to pick on. So when I cut TV, I got all those hours back, and I used them two ways. One was going out and being, social with human beings, which I think is a good thing for all of us.
Imagine that.
Yeah, like I got happy hours and young professional events and made new friends. I think that made my life better.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other nights of the week, I used those hours to work on my business. And on top of that, saving $70 a year since 2011, I've saved over $5,000 that I would have spent on cable. So there's enough for a plane ticket to Australia right there.
Yeah, well, there
Or
you
two.
go. You have an invite anytime you like. So, look, they're great insights for anybody who is wondering how difficult this is. Again, this is Eric, this is a consistent theme that we have is, being persistent and being consistent. It's just so important if you're looking to get that early momentum, because I guess it's like the steam train. Once you get that momentum, it's going to be very hard to slow down. So, Eric, what else is coming up for you? Are you doing any masterminds at the moment? What's happening in your world?
Yes, well, I'm a member of a mastermind, which I'm actually glad you brought those up because I'm working on a mastermind project also.
Hmm.
Yeah, so masterminds, I have been in a mastermind since 2011. That was the year of the first FinCon, and I went and I met this group of guys. One was a guy, and they're still all around. One is a guy named Shane. His site is Beating Broke. He lives in North Dakota.
Hmm.
One was a guy I'm still in a mastermind with. His name is Jeff. He used to have a site called Sustainable Life Blog. He sold that one,
Hmm.
and he's in Wyoming. The three of us were kind of the core group of a mastermind that I was in for about 5 years, I'd say. In our mastermind, masterminds, for those who aren't familiar, it's a small group in the entrepreneurial mastermind world who gets together on a regular or semi-regular basis to essentially just help each other succeed in business. So having those outside insights into my business and me being very transparent with them, even more so than I am already online, which that says a lot because I tell people how much money I make. But sharing everything with them, I was able to get unique insights and perspectives that helped me a lot. When that group kind of naturally wound up, one of the guys in that group, Jeff, had just joined this other mastermind that were all online entrepreneur dads. So that is my current mastermind. I've been with that group, I think about 2 years now. I joined right before I quit my job. And that's 2 years this month.
They say there's lots of power in masterminds. Absolutely.
Yeah. So and actually the reason I'm glad you brought masterminds up, I was mentioning what focus is not one of my strong suits. So I'm starting a new project with some teammates called Mastermind Hunt. And it's under development right now, but it'll be coming out very soon. And the whole purpose of it is to help people find masterminds if you want to join one, but don't know people with those similar interests or don't know where to look for them, and then to run your mastermind. So if anyone's interested, that's at mastermindhunt.com. Not live yet, but hopefully coming very, very soon. It's under active development.
That's an amazing concept. I've not heard of that before. You know, you always hear about masterminds, but oftentimes you either have to be within an existing community to even realize that they are having a mastermind. So where can people find you if they're looking for you right now, Eric?
Yeah, so the best two places, personalprofitability.com. That's my blog and podcast and personal finance site I've had since 2008. And I also have ericrosenberg.com, which is where I focus more on my freelance and consulting business.
Eric, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the My Future Business show today. I would love to have you back in the future to talk more about finance, more about your journey. And yeah, thanks again for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been fun having you on the call with us today. Now click on that big red subscribe button and make sure you leave us a comment, share us with your friends, and join the growing list of leading entrepreneurs who have enjoyed their time on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews.